What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Finger Wag Podcast. My name is Gideon Hertz. I'm, of course, the host of the Finger Wag Podcast, and excited to be back with you, back in the DMV, no longer in the Great White North. We have returned from Canada, along with your Georgetown Hoyas, and we are excited to bring you another episode of the Finger Wag Podcast, where we will break down the GLOBL JAM tournament with Jake Foote. Obviously, a lot to get into in this episode as we talk about our overall impressions from Hoyas basketball in August, the takeaways from their silver medal performance in Toronto. We'll have all of that, and then we'll go through and play a little game of stock report, where we will let you know how we're feeling about all of the individual players, as well as some of the units and big questions coming out of GLOBL JAM. Excited to get into it. I just have a couple of brief announcements and a big announcement that hopefully you've seen, that we at the Finger Wag are joining the Department of Hoops YouTube network. Really excited to join the folks over there and bring the Finger Wag Podcast to the broader DMV basketball audience. The Department of Hoops network has a variety of shows and podcasts that talk about DMV hoops, from college to the pros. You've got Wizards pods, including one with Georgetown legend Jahidi White. That's a throwback for anybody who that matters to. In addition to the Wizards podcast and coverage, they've got shows looking at the college programs in the DMV area, the Maryland Terrapins, obviously, GW, and it was only right that Georgetown should be a part of that. We are a born and bred DMV hoops focused outlet. Obviously, our focus is on Georgetown, but we firmly believe that this is the hotbed of talent in the country. And one of the things we certainly take away coming out of the GLOBL JAM tournament was how important it is that Georgetown has this DMV present. We had 4 guys on the team sharing the floor at once from the DMV, team takeover guys from Sidwell, St. John's, PVI. Georgetown basketball is DMV basketball. So we are really excited to join the Department of Hoops network. For you as listeners or viewers, not much is going to change. You'll still be able to get this podcast and hear this podcast wherever you would like. The only difference is we are going to be posting the video podcast through the Department of Hoops YouTube channel. We'll share out the links as always and have them up on our website, so you'll be able to find them. But we are excited to take our place within the DMV Hoops network, the premier DMV Hoops network. And if I do say so myself, we hope that as Georgetown, we will be taking the mantle of DMV hoops moving forward. And we're just really grateful to the Department of Hoops and Matt Moderno and all the folks over there who have extended the invitation to us, and we're excited to join the Department of Hoops. So you will see that moving forward, but shouldn't change anything about the pod or where you get the pod, except for just make sure that you're subscribed to the Department of Hoops channel so that you can stay updated on when we release those pods, and also all of the great content over there. Longer intro, because I wanted to make sure that we explained a little bit of that. There's also a deeper story and explainer up on our website, thefingerwag.com, talking about that move and why we are joining the Department of Hoops, for those who are interested. Most of you are probably just eager to get to the GLOBL JAM recap. So without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome back to the Finger Wag Podcast. I am here again with Jake Foote to recap GLOBL JAM, give you all of our GLOBL JAM analysis. What's up, Jake?
Much, Gideon. Good to talk. Welcome back to the States.
As Coach Cooley said, I am also very grateful to be back in my own bed and out of the Great White North. Though it was not white at all. It was actually very hot and felt a lot like DC, but Excited to be back and really excited to talk about Global Jam and I think was just a really great opportunity and tournament for Georgetown, even if they did come up a little bit short. We've got a lot to talk about. And so we'll dive right in very quickly, just in case you were living under a rock or rightfully we're not expecting Georgetown basketball in August and just popping up for air now. Welcome. Georgetown goes to Canada and drops the final game to Brazil. So they finish second in the tournament. That final game, 77-73. They finish with a record of 2-2 with wins against Japan and Brazil, losses against Brazil and Canada. Both of those losses were close losses. 4 points and 3 points, I think, in both of those. And they really had a chance to win both. I would say both teams, Brazil and Canada, were talented, high major level competition. So this was not, a cupcake slate other than Japan, though I think Japan beat Canada in their last game, which is genuinely very shocking to me. What were your takeaways? I know we got to see a couple of games broadcast in the US from those games that you saw and just all of the stats and the recaps and everything you saw from Global Jam. What are your biggest takeaways?
Well, first, thank you for all the coverage. I know we all supported it as fans, and thank you also to the fans, the alumni that all kind of tagged along for the trip with the Finger Wag crew. I was definitely one of the sickos that watched all 4 games, tuning into Caleb's dad's Instagram Live and forcing the people in my life to sit alongside me as I tuned into ESPN Plus at 10 o'clock on a Sunday.
Shout out to Kyle Williams for sure, for the hero that he is for streaming those games.
Yeah, that was a huge help. But I don't blame anybody that missed any of the action. These are exhibition games. The people that were scheduling around that amongst our fan base, probably a little insane, but consider myself one of them. As far as the tournament, I'm generally encouraged. I said that after the Canada game, and that remained true after how they played in the 2 Brazil games. And I'm really excited and encouraged that they just did the tournament in the first place. It's nice to play 4 games against guys that aren't your own, practice against people that aren't the guys you've been playing with for the last 2 months. And I think it really offered a super realistic and honest report card that otherwise you might not get at the end of August. So I think very, very valuable for the coaching staff, for the current players to have an idea of where everybody stands, where the rotations might stand heading into.
Yeah, and you heard that from Coach Cooley a couple of times, and I think it just cannot be overstated how important this tournament could be for them just to get high major big games in August. It's just not something that you usually get, and the ability to play talented teams who are not your own guys who you're seeing every day for months. And we saw, Canada's got a bunch of high major guys. Brazil has some international pros. They've got a really, really good team. And Georgetown, I think, in all of those games and even getting some opportunities to stress test themselves in crunch time scenarios, I think that's just invaluable. And overall, I think what we saw from the team and individual players was really encouraging. Who are you well, we'll get to the stock report, so I won't ask it that way. But in terms of how the team played, was it as expected for you, or were there some surprises that you either positive or negative?
I think it was mostly as expected. In that the team really struggled offensively, but really has already created an identity defensively, even having not played with each other all that much. I think the results were kind of a little better than I even hoped for, in that even if they did play poorly offensively, they were really in it at the end and they got a lot of value. I was also pretty encouraged with just how competitive and physical the games were. They weren't an exhibition by any means. That Brazilian team really cared, and that was a very real physical February-March type game on Sunday night. And then amongst the players, and we'll touch upon it, but I think a lot of people were kind of where I was at, with one person who we'll get to being way ahead of what I was expecting out of them in
Yeah.
DeShawn. And I think his resurgence and his ability to kind of grab that opportunity with KJ and Love out and become or showcase himself as a guy that can be a bit of an alpha, very, very valuable. I think he's a real player.
I'm with you. We'll get to it. I think for me, one of the things that I was just looking for is where is the overall quality of this team? And we talk a lot about floor versus ceiling. And I guess I was really interested in the floor of this team, particularly compared to where it was last year. Obviously, with guys like Thomas Sorber before he got hurt, Micah Peavy throughout the year, Jayden Epps in and out, you had guys who had really, really high ceilings. And I think it's still a question whether we have those guys on this team. But in terms of the overall depth that this team is bringing in, I think it is higher than it was last year. I think you're absolutely right about the identity this team has, and I think they know what their identity is. And I thought we just saw guys that were brought in who just know how to play basketball and make winning plays across the floor. And I think whether they're able to put it together on the offensive end and really, reach their top of their ceiling, I think is a question, but they're going to be competitive and in a lot of games this year. And we're going to see a lot of, I think, the similar games to what we saw in Canada that are rock fight games that can be a little frustrating, but both teams have a shot and Georgetown's going to be in them. And I think that that's just really encouraging. And I guess, as you've been saying, that's an Ed Cooley team.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say, that I think Cooley may have struck out on some of his top targets in the portal this offseason, but he made a concentrated effort to put together a group that's not going to get punked again. And I think the group he's had the last 2 years at times has gotten, especially year one, but then again in the second half of year two, was a group that was capable of just not having it physically on any given day and getting pushed around. This team, I think even when they don't shoot it, they're going to play the opposing team to the final whistle just because they're not going to make it easy on any opponent. And they have an ability, and I think this is Cooley touched upon this in one of his pressers. They're deep enough with high major quality guys, even if some of these guys are fringe high major role guys, that if somebody doesn't have it physically that game, or if somebody's just a bad matchup that game, there's another guy they can turn to. So the staff can get really creative with lineups, with combinations, and with rotations. And, I think they're going to be a team that travels well. I think they're going to be a team that could punch a team in the mouth at the beginning of the season that isn't expecting such a rock fight. Hopefully it turns into wins, even if we'll touch upon it later, but even if I'm quite concerned about the offense.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's exactly right. And just for me, there's a good amount of guys on this team, despite there being actually a number of guys who are inexperienced. I mean, no freshmen on this team, but as Cooley said in one of his pressers, a lot of guys who have played 5 games or less or have not gotten a ton of opportunity to really shine at the collegiate level. But within that, you've got a number of guys who are just really, really solid collegiate players. And I'm thinking of guys like Jeremiah Williams, DeShawn Harris-Smith, who we'll talk about. But again, I just think the floor is there, and I'm really encouraged by it.
Yeah, and it's going to make the younger kids like Seal, Fort, Mulready, if they want to get into the rotation, they're going to have to beat out an upperclassman that's established himself at the college level, and that lends itself to competition. I think all 3 of those guys are on the outside looking in, and are still on the raw developmental side, but I think it's pretty easy to convince yourself that every scholarship player on the roster belongs on a high major roster, which I don't think was the case in the past few years.
Hasn't been the case for quite a while. All right. With that said, let's jump into our main gambit for today. We're going to play stock report. I'm sure other people do this, but I'm going to say I mostly made this up. We're going to go down a list of each of the individual players and have some bonus questions as well. And we'll each say whether we are buying stock holding our stock or selling our stock. So after Global Jam, where are you feeling? How are you feeling about a particular player? Do you think there's upside there? Are you trying to claim real estate on particular islands, or are you ready to sell? And I don't think there will be a lot of selling here on individual guys, but I think we'll talk through some of the places where we might disagree and what has changed in terms of how you view guys after Global Jam, as opposed to before. Let's start by going down the roster of guys here, and I'll start with Caleb Williams. I am a pretty firm buy on Caleb Williams. Where are you?
There are some things I really like. I think the shooting's for real, even if the numbers don't totally look it because of how poorly he shot it on Sunday. But I'd probably say a hold. I feel like his stock neither rise nor fell this week.
Yeah, you mentioned the shooting numbers, and I think it's important to break those down into two chunks, frankly, and I'll tell you why. But in the first 2 games against Japan and Canada, he shot 40% from 3. In the 2 games against Brazil, he was 1 for 9. So 2 ends of the spectrum. I think particularly in that last game against Brazil, he and a lot of guys, frankly, but I think he was a big victim of just exhaustion. I think he was gassed. His shot looked like he just did not have the legs in it. He had a lot of those shots were coming up short. And I think, Coach Cooley mentioned that the guys looked tired. They played 5 games in 6 days, including a friendly against Brazil before the tournament. I think Caleb really suffered from that. I feel far more confident in the first 2 games being the Caleb Williams we're more likely to see, though 40% is a lot to ask, but I kind of think he can do it. I think the shot just looks smooth, confident, faster than it did last year. What did you see from his shot that either encourages you or doesn't?
I agree on all accounts. I think the shot can be a 40% 3-point shot. I like that it's quick, simple, repeatable. He definitely lost his legs, and sometimes those really quick releases, if you don't have the legs and aren't establishing that base, you're just not going to get it there, which looked to be the case. It looked like he was rushing him a little bit in that final game. Elsewhere on the court, I think it was kind of same old Caleb. Pretty much a reliable duty rebounder. Was a decent defender. Kind of lost this guy a few times in that Brazil game at the end.
Yeah.
I think 2 reasons why. 1, I think he was losing his legs. But 2, they were showing a lot of zone looks, and he kind of got lost on the weak side of the zone a few times on skip passes. Now, I don't think this team's going to play a lot of zone, but I think 2 reasons they were doing that was, 1, Cooley was using this to try things, and 2, they may have been trying to hide Julius a little bit defensively, and thus they were in his zone. So take that all with a grain of salt. I don't think that matters all that much. But I think Caleb's going to have a role. He's going to have a significant role, and he played the 3rd most minutes of anybody there. But I think what may affect Caleb more than anything is that some of the role guys that are also vying for minutes played well. So it's not like an Isaiah Abraham or a DeShawn Harris-Smith were like, damn, they're barely going to contribute this year. Caleb's going to have to play 30. I think minutes amongst all those wings, potential 4 men, is going to get divvied up more on the even side. So I would imagine Caleb is still pretty firmly a role player, albeit a very reliable one.
Yeah. I think at this point, Caleb is your starting 4, which is what we sort of thought he would slot into just as on account of the roster. I don't think he did anything to lose that spot, but I think you're right that with a full roster of KJ Lewis and Langston Love, who both probably slot into the starting lineup, I think there's a real question of how do you sort of disseminate the minutes between Caleb, DeShawn, and Isaiah, who all can play in that 3-4-ish zone, not to mention Jayden Ford, who I don't think is completely on the outside looking in, though probably the last on that list right now.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this tournament offered a lot of clarity in terms of what the front court rotation is going to look like between the 3 and the 4. especially given how many looks they can go with their guards, whether they want to slide a guy like DeShawn or KJ Lewis down, or whether they want to slide a guy like DeShawn and KJ Lewis up. I think that there's some very likely instances this year where they go 1 through 4, Mack, KJ, DeShawn, and Love. And whether that's Love or Caleb is that fourth starter amongst those three.
Yeah.
That role on offense is much more of just a spacer than anything else. So again, it's a good problem to have, that you have numerous quality options amongst the rotation players, and that the guys still have to compete for another 3 months or 2.5 months to establish their roles heading into the season.
So I'm a buy on Caleb. You're a hold, though not much has changed in terms of your expectations for him. And I will note, you did have the upside expectation that he could be a 40% three-point shooter, and it looks like that's a real possibility. Let's go to our next guy, who I think is an interesting one, Isaiah Abraham. Where are you on him?
You're going to be higher again. Still a hold. Still a hold for me.
I'm interested in hearing why. I will tell you, I am a buy. I am a big buy because mostly I think because I just didn't know how he fit into this roster really. I thought he had a good pedigree, obviously coming from PVI, highly recruited, went to UConn, all of that signals that he could be a player, but we just didn't see him last year. And so getting the first look at him, I was really impressed with him for a couple of reasons. One, he looked like a guy who's just going to be able to take and make open shots when they come, even if they don't come frequently, which they didn't in this tournament, despite him being a starter. And I think that's really encouraging, because if you're a guy who gets 1 or 2 shots a game and can make one or both of them, that's huge. And I was just really impressed with all of the things that he was able to do on the floor. I think we talked in our last episode that he's the even better version of Wayne Bristol Jr. And I saw a lot of that, just active, athletic, making a lot of the nitty gritty plays on the floor that don't show up anywhere but are essential. I think I'm still a little concerned about where he fits into this team when they're healthy with KJ and Langston, but I think he should play. I think he should absolutely play, and that is much a different place than I was prior to this, if only because I just had not seen enough of him.
Yeah, that's kind of what's holding me back, is that he's going to be facing a logjam of guys in the position that he's going to play, and he's really not a 4.
Yeah.
He looks very much like a wing out there, but he did everything you could ask for him this weekend. He guarded well. He guarded big men pretty well when they asked him to do so. He shot at 40% from 3. He played, how many minutes did he play? He played 94 minutes and he didn't turn the ball over. I mean, pretty solid. He was a plus 24 on the week, plus 3 if you don't include the Japan game. A decent enough glue guy. And again, I was stressing this the other day. Really young kid that really hasn't played a lot of basketball, or college basketball that is. Type of player that could really grow into something with time as he becomes more of a threat offensively and in transition. So excited about him in the long run, for sure. He's a kid I'd really hope to keep a part of the program for the next 3 years. Just a little hesitant on declaring that he's going to have a significant role. Again, all depends on how these guys kind of shake out over the course of the next 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, I think that's right. The role is a question. I'm pretty confident that if he does stick around, he is a guy that can be a contributor over the long term for them. And I think for me, it's a buy, because if there are injuries or for some reason he has to play more than we might think right now, I feel totally comfortable with that.
Yeah, he should have played more in that championship game. Cooley sat him a stretch in the second quarter for like 7-8 minutes, which after he played really well in the first. Cooley gave Fort a pretty extended run out in the second half, which I know he's just kind of trying to get the sea legs under Fort. And that would have been probably the game to say that Caleb didn't have it. Let's pivot to the guy that's a pretty similar player to him in Abraham. So I would have liked him to play more. But again, I don't think he's the type of guy, like you said, that if Caleb is your rotational 4, that if Caleb doesn't have it that day, I don't think there's a huge drop-off going to an Abraham, especially not in quality of team play, because he's going to fit right in with whatever 4 other guys you put around.
Yeah. Let's go to a really interesting one. I think you might actually be higher than me on this. So I'm interested to see where you are on Vince Iwuchukwu. Where are you?
I feel pretty vindicated. I'm not going to lie.
After that Japan game, it was a little touch and go.
Oh, yeah, but this is why I could have told you that was going to happen, because I knew that Japan, you could toss him to Julius and he would score like it was nothing. And no matter who Vince plays, it's never going to look elegant when you toss the ball into him on a post-up. He shot 41% over the week and went like 10 of 10 on dunks, which means he probably went like 3 of 20 on everything else, which is not very good out of a 7-footer. And again, there still needs to be a lot that develops in the next 4 months offensively with regards to tipping the ball back in the hoop with coordination, receiving balls in the post, using his hands efficiently. But he does a lot of things that I really like personally. And he's the type of big that Cooley's never really had. Cooley's never really had this super long pogo stick center that you can rim run with. And it can really, one, it can generate some looks offensively. You know, especially off the catch of the alley-oop, we've never had a lob threat. But 2, it can really affect what you do defensively. And I think in those last 3 games, it was very obvious that he really, really raised the level of defense when he was out there. I'll hand it off to you and let you discuss, but there's some more things about him I want to touch upon, but I'll let you get your thoughts first.
Yeah, I think I'm a buy. And
yeah, I'm a buy, by the way.
Gotcha. All right, so you're a firm buy. I think buy. The things that I'll come to the things that are holding me back in a second, but I'm with you on the defense and the unique athleticism that he brings. And it's really clear that when he's out there with a defensive-minded lineup, like with DHS and Jay Will and Abraham and potentially KJ Lewis, that's going to be an absolute nightmare to play against. Not only because he is so big and athletic, but he's showed that he can switch on to guards late in the shot clock. And just by account of being huge and long, he's a nightmare to shoot over.
That was the most impressive thing he did all week was 8 seconds left on the shot clock. He just takes the switch, and it was a death sentence. I don't think I saw anybody make a shot over him, and he blocked a few of them. And he can move laterally, both with guards and with wing players. And he played the whole week without fouling, which was a big concern I had about him. But on that side of the ball, he looks really up for it.
Yeah. And by the way, he did that against Brazilian guys who were shooting lights out, but you could say, well, they're not the, high major quality. I would say, A, they absolutely were, but B, he also did that against high major guys like Xavier Lee against Canada, who is one of the highly touted transfers going to Florida next year. Aiden Holloway, kid. So he did that against some of guys you would expect to be high upside guards in high major basketball next season. I am really encouraged about the way he finished this tournament. The last 2 games against Brazil, I think he was really, really good. You talked about a few of the reasons why. I also, for me, in the first 2 games, he just looked like a ghost on the glass. He had seven rebounds in the first 2 games, and I swear to God, 5 of them came on one play. His first play against Japan, where he had I think it was either 4 or 5 offensive rebounds that he just kept grabbing and kept missing the putbacks. So really, he had no rebounds in those first 2 games. Was a real issue. Coach Cooley mentioned it, and he finishes the last 2 games against Brazil, had 14 rebounds and was solid on the glass. And I think that was really encouraging to see him just commit to being not only a post player offensively, but on the glass as well. My biggest concern right now is just, as you mentioned, if he's getting a dunk, great. If he's getting anything else, I'm not super confident that it's going in. And my concern is that the process looked pretty good. The touch just did not look great. And I'm not sure whether that's something that improves, something that was unique to this tournament. That's my biggest question mark. So that's where my hesitancy comes in on the bye, but I think I'm in on everything else.
Yeah, as far as offensively, so I think this could go two ways with him. When he showed up at the tournament, it definitely looked like he gave himself some self-appointed freedom offensively. He was taking 3-point shots. Again, he doesn't need to be shooting those. Maybe he's telling himself or the staff's telling him that if he wants to play at the next level, he's got to be some sort of a stretch big. But I really think his pathway to a long professional career is just being a pretty elite rim running lob threat that can be very switchable on defense and protect the rim. Now, what I liked about him is the staff obviously went to him in those final 3 games where they were playing high major opponents, and they reeled him in. And I'm very hopeful that something clicked for him, that it's, hey, this game's pretty easy if I just rebound the basketball and play defense. In those 3 games against Canada and Brazil, he played 62 minutes, so about 21 per. He was 31 points on 50% from the field, 15 rebounds, which decent enough. That's about 9-10 rebounds per 40 minutes, in 6 blocks. But more than anything, had the highest plus minus on the team over the course of those 3 games, where the backup center, which we'll get to, had the lowest plus minus. I think that's the biggest discrepancy of what the team showed this week, is basically what Vince offered them defensively. That totally kind of raised the floor of who they were. So I'd be hammering home the next 3 months that, hey, Vince, this is what we need from you. We need from you to be a rim running roll man, short corner dunker, maybe tidy up the offensive rebounds a little better. I love that he tries to dunk everything, that he just, if he gets the ball in a low block, he's trying to put his elbows in the rim. But if it isn't a dunk, you are very right. It's not very graceful and it's not very efficient. So definitely some more things still need to click for it to really take off. But I can pretty easily convince myself that he could be like a 10-point per game, 6.5 rebound per game, 2 to 2.5 block per game net positive out there. And if your center's giving you that, you got a chance.
Yeah, I think that's right. And just the ferocity that he was trying to dunk with, and not trying to, that he did dunk with, was fun to watch. I think Hoya fans are going to love him for that reason, but also his defense. But he is massive, and the more that he leans into that, I think you're right that he can raise his ceiling on this team, but also moving forward if he just leans into his strengths.
Yeah, 100%. Just simplify the game. But I agree that the physical traits were not exaggerated. Yeah. He's a freak.
Let's talk about another guy who I think we might have some disagreement on. Malik Mack. Where are you?
I might annoy some people or shock the world here. I'm gonna buy.
Love it. Tell me why.
So he shot it horribly, and I know he went on and on the other day about how the shooting needs to be unlocked for him to take the step. And he shot 30% over the course of the entire tournament while taking the far most amount of shots on the team. He shot at 24% from 3, which again is just not good enough. But it's just such a small sample size that if he regresses to the mean and is something like even 38% from the field and 32% from 3, which is still probably not as good as we'd hope, he's walking out of this tournament averaging 17.5 and 8 assists with the really great assist to turnover ratio, and we're all over the moon. So I'm still kind of long-term betting that the shot gets hot at the right times and becomes hopefully a little bit more consistent. But I really liked the process out of him. I thought he looked better defensively than he did last year. I thought he looks bigger. I thought he was able to process pick and rolls and kind of snake to his spots far better than he did last year. I know he shot far more than anybody on the team. That was because they were asking him to create a lot out of nothing. But I think he kind of picked his spots correctly, but also got people involved correctly. I think he finds a lot of value in playing next to DeShawn. I think that goes hand in hand, that they've played together their whole lives, and they certainly look for each other when they kind of get in trouble. He also, I think, benefited from DeShawn initiating the offense a lot of the times and playing off the ball. Yeah. I mean, again, I said it the other day that you can't put makeup on a 5 for 21 shooting performance, and you can't put makeup on shooting 17 for 56 over the entire week, but he's so close. He's
Yeah.
so close. And once he starts making shots, fingers crossed it happens. It's going to be a really, I don't even want to say great, but more so like just a more reliable offensive player, which they really need. Because again, at the very end, if we do some takeaways, I'll talk about the offense versus the defense, and the offense still has a long way to go. So they need Malik. Very last point. I know I'm being long-winded right now. He's going to benefit from Langston Love and KJ Lewis playing out there, because he just needs other guys out there alongside him that can create, and it can't always just be 8 seconds are on the shot clock. Malik, go try to make something happen. He needs other creators out there.
Yeah, so I think I'm officially a whole, but agree with almost everything that you said. And the reason I'm a hold is because I was a sell before that last game, and I was really encouraged by the last game. And that was not to say that he played poorly in the previous games. It's at a point with Malik that I think you're right that a lot of his process looked better. I thought he was much better on pick and roll than he was last season. I think he does look bigger. All of it looked better. It just didn't lead to the results until that last game. And then that last game, he goes 19 points, 40% from the field, 37% from three, 4 boards, 7 assists, still 3 turnovers. But again, he's a focal point. And just seeing it happen in one game, and I'm with you that it's a small sample size across the full tournament, but I think we're getting close to the being past the process. Is the process good with Malik? And it's got to be the results.
Yes.
And so until the results are consistent, I'm a hold, but I am higher than I was because we're not guessing if he can do it. He showed that he could do it in one game, and it's one game, but he did it. So
yeah, and the unfortunate thing for Malik and for Georgetown is that he's really only going to be graded on whether the ball ends up in the basket or not.
Right.
Because there's nothing else really on the court where he's going to be a plus guy. You have him out there as a major part of your rotation to create baskets for those around him and for him. And the possessions just have to end in makes. They have to.
I just need to see it more consistently. And I think you're absolutely right that he's a guy, and we knew this going in, that he's a guy who's going to look better with KJ and Langston Love and a better offensive system. And it's not tremendously surprising to me that he looked a little bit like he did in Big East play last season in this tournament, because he had a team that had some similar offensive challenges that hopefully will be corrected in part by personnel with KJ and Langston, but also with some of these guys developing and coming together.
Yeah, I thought it looked even more like Harvard than it did at the end of last year, just because he got that facilitating part of his game back. And he did it without really turning the ball over. 30 assists to 12 turnovers over the week. And that's what really stood out to me when we got him from Harvard, watching a lot of his old games back, was that he really commanded double teams and high hedges out of the ball screen his freshman year. Everybody in the Ivy League had a big fat target on his chest when they played Harvard. He was really the only guy on their team that was going to beat you offensively. And that's kind of how he was guarded at this tournament, but also how he navigated the tournament offensively. He just didn't make shots, or he made some shots, he just didn't make enough. But again, like I was saying, the difference between 38 and 30% from the field over a four game sample like this, and the difference between 32% from three and 24% from three over a 4 game sample like this is like 4 makes, 2 of which are threes.
Yeah.
Which you could watch the film and it would take you 10 minutes to find 4 bunnies that Malik wishes he could have back.
And this is unconfirmed, but I am very convinced that there was something up with that ball, whether it was just the different FIBA ball and guys were a little uncomfortable with it. It was not just Georgetown, but I do think Malik fell victim to shots that looked like they were frankly down, and then for some magical reason the ball takes a weird bounce off the backboard or the rim or something like that. He had a lot of those, but this was across the board. I saw this on the women's side too, where it just looked like, I don't know, the ball was overinflated or something was up.
Yeah, Canada didn't shoot it well either, which are a bunch of college players, and Brazil shot it great. There was a couple Malik where when he was spinning it off the backboard, put a little too much English on it, which you could always ask yourself if that's the ball.
All right, let's go to DeShawn Harris-Smith. And I think we're both on the same page on this, so I might just let you cook on this because I think we're both buys.
I mean, I'm gonna love KJ Lewis when he starts playing, but as of now, he's my favorite guy on the team.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I think that they unlocked something just by letting him be himself again. You know, they're not pigeonholing him at all. They put the ball in his hands as an initiator and as a slasher. They gave him a ton of responsibility defensively, and he did really well with it. He didn't shoot it great, but he didn't shoot it awful. He 4-14 from 3 over the course of the week, 29%. If he does that, I think you totally live with it. And I think the kid's just a winner.
Yeah.
He played the last 2 games on a bub ankle, and it didn't really slow him down. The last 12 to 16 minutes of that Brazil game, he was extremely animated coming through on the broadcast. That type of kid that cares that much, that's that tough and plays pretty smart. It's Cooley. It's Cooley to a T. I can't imagine he's not out there 25 to 30 minutes a game, even if it's in more of a role rather than what this role was, which was almost like a alpha or secondary alpha. Just really excited about how he's going to fit in. I think he's a guy that you might just look at the stat sheet at the end of the year and he's like 9-10 points a game, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. And you just think, damn, that's a tough player.
Yeah, I think we mentioned on the last podcast, we both sort of our ears sort of pricked up a little bit when Cooley said does a lot of things that Micah Peavy did defensively last year. Because I think that's just our respect for how good Micah Peavy was defensively. But as the tournament went on, he's right. He's not the same defender as Micah Peavy. He's not the same sort of dictating and on ball guy, but some of his defensive rotations where he's being asked to do a lot was really impressive. And I think that for me, just a starting point, he's going to be tough to take off the floor because of how much he raises your floor defensively. And he shrank a little bit in the Japan game or in the Canada game. And then you kind of expect after he takes that really, really nasty fall on the ankle that that's it, he's done. So we're left with more questions. But to come back, play on that ankle, look like nothing was wrong, and play as well as he did in those last 2 Brazil games, absolutely taking over parts of those games when they really needed him to. He's going to be really hard to keep off the floor. And I think one thing you heard from Cooley already start to talk about this is they recruited him by telling him they think he can play anywhere on the floor. He's totally positionless. And I think you're going to see him all over the floor and just playing a lot of minutes.
Yeah. When he signed, I kind of like turned my nose up at it and was just like, man, really? Like, we don't really have the space for him.
Where does he fit?
Where's he going to play?
Yeah.
And after watching him for 120 minutes or however long he played over those 4 days, like now if I'm doing any sort of rotation discussion, I'm trying to figure out how to work the other guys around him. Because I don't see how you sit him. He's your best rebounder you got. He's one of your 2 best passers you've got. He's, like you said, a very good defender, a very smart defender.
Really smart.
Not the crazy athlete that he was advertised out of high school, but he just gets to spots and he uses his body, his strength to his advantage. And he's bigger than he was last year in Maryland. When I watched him in Maryland, I always thought he was a little out of shape because he wasn't moving that well. He's in shape right now. Ken White did him right over 2 months. I'm really excited about him. I don't think he needs to be. I mean, he proved it at Maryland that he can totally play as the fifth guy out there, because they never asked him to do anything offensively. But he's my favorite guy. I'm extremely excited. I had 12 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.5 turnover over the week. Stud.
Yeah. On a bum ankle for 2 of those games.
And he shot it well, 50% from the field, 29% from 3. He finished at the rim really well, which is something that he didn't really do at Maryland, which he needs to do the way he plays. Any sort of stride that you could have convinced yourself he was going to make, or any sort of unlocking potential that could have happened, looks like it's happening.
Yeah. He just looks, I didn't watch him a ton at Maryland, but from what I've seen previously and what you've said, and talking to him at this tournament, he just looks and seems really comfortable.
Yeah,
I think part of that is, frankly, he talked about it, playing with some of these guys for most of his life. He's been, Malik Mack's been his best friend since 7th grade. He just looks like he feels comfortable. And I think this is the type of guy that you love to get with Ed Cooley, who can match the potential and where he's strongest with how he wants his teams to play, and just get the most out of a guy like that. And it looks like sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, there's been no bigger recruit or transfer for us than what Micah was, just in getting a guy like that to the NBA, and also what it did for getting KJ Lewis and potential other players from the David Peavy connection. But if there was one that you could convince yourself might compare, it's turning DeShawn into a really good college player, because it can repair all of your relations with TakeOver, all of your relations with DMV. And if you can get that guy back to what he was in high school, I'm really excited about what it could mean for the program and for local relations. And I just like watching him play.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right, let's stay on this seesaw. We're going to go potentially the other way with this one. It's safe to say, not the most encouraging tournament from Julius. I am a sell, but with the caveat that this is August and I'm not really fully selling anybody on this team. And I think we've talked about Julius's upside. His potential is there. I think we just need to maybe temper the expectations of where he might be right now. And I think you were doing this coming into the tournament. We got a little ahead of our skis maybe after the Japan game, and thinking, oh gosh, this is who he's going to be against everyone. And it's clearly not. Where are you and Julius, and what is your realistic expectation and your sort of upside expectation of him?
He's got 3 months before the season, so there's still a lot he can do with his body to get right.
He needs it.
It's kind of exactly what I expected. And I know I've been probably the one kind of tempering expectations with him over the last 2 months. And this was why. I was just a little nervous about what his body looked like and what his motor looked like out there with high major players. If I guess for the purpose of the exercise, I'd sell, just if you have to sell one guy on the team. But even then, I'm not selling in the long term. I think a lot of things haven't gone right for him with injuries last year, and he just needs to play, and he needs to get his legs underneath him, and he needs to put some weight back on. He needs to see the jumper go down. Part of his luxury is supposed to be as a spacer, and he shot 0-6 from 3 at this tournament. I think he shot 0-4 from 3 at FIBA's. So it's been a long time since we saw him actually make a 3. What I will give him as a positive is he established his position on the low block offensively pretty well. When he gets the ball and his back's to the basket, he's very comfortable making a move to get into a spot where he can score over either shoulder. He has an ability to pump fake, go either way, and that type of guy is going to score. He's going to have a lot of easiness against mid-major opponents, establishing position and getting those baskets like it's nothing. His challenge is going to be scoring in those situations against high major competition. And also, I think he needs to be a little better off the catch in some of these roll situations and some of these short corner situations where he was trying to float it over the front of the rim. And I think that needs to just be, the backboard, or, even a dunk if you could. Again, I'm not too worried about the offense. He led the team in points per 40 minutes over the course of the tournament. Even in those 3 games where he struggled at the back half of the tournament, he scored 18 points in 21 minutes. Although a lot of it's from the line. I think he shot 5 of 17 from the field over that stretch, which he's got to do better than that if he's a 7-footer. But the concern is obviously somewhat defensively and very much rebounding. If you're 7 feet tall out there, you got to get on the glass.
Yeah, I think all of that's right. I don't think we need to belabor this too much. I think you're absolutely right. He's got 3 months till the season. And I think, to me, a lot of this is all connected in what I ultimately saw was just a little bit of a lack of confidence towards the end of the tournament. And that I think you're right about the shot. It was interesting watching him in warmups. He shoots a lot of threes in warmups, and they all look really good. Not a ton of them go in warmups either. So I think he's just lacking a little bit of confidence in that space. And I think there's potentially some benefits to him seeing, as you say, he's going to get buckets against a lot of the sort of mid-major and cupcake schedule early on. And that could be a good thing if he's able to sort of string some games together, find some footing. Right now, he's a big question mark against the high major bigs, as we saw in this tournament. And I think it's just going to take time.
Yeah, I've got a few last points.
Yeah.
He shot 12 of 13 from the line, so he's a capable shooter.
And two at the end of the Brazil game. Well, one at the end of the Brazil game, and then the block that looked like it was going in that were clutch.
Yeah, I've got no issues with him when he's fouled. It's typically 2 points. The 3-point shot, I think it comes in time.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be opposed to them shelving it a little bit.
Yeah.
And saying, like, go be a old school Cooley low post player. You're really good at it offensively.
Yeah.
Because he's pretty efficient around the basket, less efficient the further he gets away from it. I think I might have said that he had 18 points in 21 minutes a second ago back. He played 41 minutes in those 3 games, which 18 points is fine over the course of 41 minutes. The concern, he had 3 rebounds. And I think we spoke about it in the past that he's kind of a guy that just occupies his space and you need a gang rebound around him. But we're going to be a group that plays, we're going to be a physical group, but we're probably going to play on the smaller side, 1 through 4.
Yeah.
And he needs to carry his weight on the offensive glass, or else they're going to be surrendering extra possessions with him out there. Which they're going to be the type of team that they're going to have to limit you to 1 because that's going to be their calling card. Again, I don't think the sky is falling. I think this is exactly what I expected to see from him once he was faced up against guys that were 6'9", 6'10", 245 and athletic. And he's just going to learn by getting thrown in the fire.
Yeah.
And figuring it out.
Go next to Jeremiah Williams. I'm a hold on him just because I thought he was good. He showed good flashes. I still have questions about what his upside looks like, but I think he is exactly what I sort of expected going in, or showed exactly what I expected going in. Where are you on him?
Yeah, I think hold's reasonable because he's going to be a role player, but liked what I saw defensively, liked how he fit in playing off ball alongside Mack. I think that was a little worry of mine, given that his numbers have always been a lot better offensively when he was the primary guy and not standing next to Dylan Harper. He shot it pretty well. He was 50% from the field, or a tick above. He went 4 for 10 from 3.
Yeah.
If he's a guy who's not anemic offensively, he's going to play. It's probably going to be in the region of 14 to 18 minutes a game, but I think a quality get. I'm very happy he's on the team.
Yeah, he closed particularly in the close games, and even with a full lineup, a full roster, I could see him on the floor late in games because of his defensive upside and his ability to just make the right play offensively.
Yeah, that's what I'd emphasize. What I took away from his game is that he just makes the right play. He looks like an adult. He didn't get sped up on the baseline pass to Fort in that first Brazil game that ended up being a really, really critical basket. He had another play when I was watching on the stream that it doesn't even make it on the box score because Vince got fouled on the entry pass and ball gets inbounded underneath and nobody shoots, nobody scores. But he caught a long outlet pass from DHS on the wing, and Vince was running the floor. And Vince can run the floor, I'll give him that. And Vince established position, which Vince isn't the best at that. But if he kind of turned his man down, backed him down, and it was a guard because the big man hadn't followed Vince down the floor yet. And Jeremiah caught the ball on the wing, pretty much, foul line extended a little further out. Didn't even dribble. It was just like a slow lob down to the block so that Vince could further establish his position and receive. And the kid just hacked Vince.
Yeah.
And it was a foul and ball underneath. But that's the right play where most guards catch the ball in transition and they want to dribble, and they want to dribble to the middle of the floor so that they can distribute from there. But the right play is getting the ball to your big man on a 7-inch mismatch without the ball ever touching the floor. So, and I think he's a guy that's going to do that consistently. And if other guys are better than him and he doesn't play a ton, that means you're in good shape.
All right, let's go to our last two guys here. And maybe we do these two as a group because I think we have good thoughts on each of them, but they're both, for me, buys, and that's Seal Diouf and Jayden Fort. I thought, obviously, our first time really seeing these guys, and I liked what I saw from both of them. I think I am higher in the short term on Fort based off of what we saw. I think he could potentially be a contributor on this team. I think, for me, Seal is a guy who, if he has to play 5 or 10 minutes in a game because of foul trouble or injuries, I feel pretty confident in that. And I think he's not gonna make a ton of mistakes. Where are you on both or either?
Yeah, I think both are long-term buys for sure. Both kind of ahead of where I expected.
Yeah.
We'll start with Fort. Fort was 11 for 15 from the field. He hit a 3, went 4 or 5 from the line. Still a little lost mentally, but the athletic traits are there. Once the game slows down for him, I think he's going to be a really valuable piece. There wasn't a play called for him the entire week, and he scored like 18 points per 40 minutes just off kind of motor and off dunking the basketball. I actually really like the shot.
Yeah.
It's very, very slow and methodical, but it looks like somebody kind of stripped it down to the basics and said, find something that's comfortable for you. And the form's nice. I think you have something to work with there. So, he's going to have a hard fight with Caleb and Isaiah to really break into the rotation. But if Julius starts playing more, there's going to be value with Fort playing alongside him to give the front court a little more size and athleticism. And I think he'll play. He might not play a ton, but another guy that I really hope they can keep around for 3 or 4 years, because the adult version of him is probably a beast.
Yeah, you mentioned the dunk he had in the Brazil game, the first Brazil game, off the backdoor pass from Jay Will. I think either right before that or right after that, he he grabs the offensive rebound off of a missed free throw and goes right back up, scores, gets fouled, misses that free throw. But those 2 buckets they don't win that game without those 2 buckets.
Yeah, he won them that third game, I agree. And there was a possession in the championship game where he was the one guy on the low block on a missed free throw. I don't know if it was the Malik one that he missed at the end. No, because Malik missed the first, right? Somebody missed a free throw. And he had tipped it up like 3 times and he almost came down with it. But instinct's a little lacking, but the motor, the want to, when there's a loose ball in his vicinity, look the part. So excited about him. Seal, again, I'm still super interested in him. I think that if they get in a pinch this year where one of their centers get hurt, I'm okay with him playing relatively big minutes. I think there's a world in which he could beat out Julius. I think it's a long shot, but if Julius doesn't meet the physical threshold to compete, Seal is going to.
Yeah.
He played 17 minutes against not Japanese teams, Canada and Brazil. And in those 17 minutes, he was just a -1.
Yeah.
The team survived with him out there. He only had 2 points the whole tournament on 1 of 5 shooting. But in 27 minutes, he had 10 rebounds and 5 assists, which is per 40, 15 rebounds and 7.5 assists, which is ridiculous out of a center on both metrics. So I think he could be a guy that, especially long-term, when the offense comes easier to him and he learns how to score with patience on the low block, can be a guy that just affects every aspect of the game with his physicality and his intelligence. He's intelligent offensively, I think. Defensively, I think he's fine, but he has a penchant for roughing guys up a little bit after the whistle, which might get him into trouble. But I like it. I like it. He knows that's his role. He knows his way onto the floor is just be a real pain in the ass to play against. I think, was it the third game that wasn't on the broadcast where I think it was Atari got caught on a ball screen with him and was locking his arm and holding him, and Shield just two-hand shoved him right to the ground.
Yeah. Yes.
I like that.
Yeah. And he's, you say two-hand shove. It was a two-hand shove. It was.
He just put him on the ground.
Yeah. And somehow that was adjudicated just a double foul call. And on one hand, it was absolutely a technical foul on Seal. On the other hand, he was getting mauled by Atari or whoever it was coming off that screen. And if they just call the first one, it probably doesn't escalate to that. But he was clearly done with this little guy grabbing his arm, and he said enough's enough.
Yeah. I like him. I think he's got a long way to go. Looked like a kid playing his first college minutes, but I think it looks good in a couple of years.
Yeah. And I think your point about just if he has to play and if there's a world in which Julius just does not have it this year and Seal has to be your backup big, I'm not that worried about it. I think he'll get better defensively. He looked like a guy who just hasn't played a lot and was a little lacking in the feel of the game, but the passing really stood out to me. It just not something that I expected at all, and his vision offensively was solid.
Yeah, agreed.
Really good. All right, let's close out with a couple of just big picture things. I do want to just get your thoughts on, if less of a stock report, but just if your thinking has changed on any of the three guys who didn't play. That's KJ, Lewis, Langston Love, and Kayvaun Mulready. Anything change about those guys in your mind based off of what we did see in Canada?
Not really. I think KJ really has to be the guy, maybe less so on the defensive end, that they're going to have a couple options to throw at the other team's best perimeter player. And KJ could be a guy that guards in the front court more often like he did at Arizona. But they're really going to need him to be a guy offensively. Kayvaun has a really tall task to crack the rotation.
Yeah.
It's the Jeremiah and DeShawn were kind of ahead of what I thought they were going to be. And Kayvaun's either going to have to really shoot it or somebody's going to probably have to go down. And then Langston, huge wild card in that I think if the leg is a bum leg and that he's not the best defensively and doesn't have a lot of his creation abilities, he's another one that's at risk for being surpassed in the rotation, which is kind of crazy to say of a kid that just played 28 minutes per game on an 8 seed.
Yeah.
But on the other hand of that, they could really, really use what he can provide offensively, both as a shooter and as a secondary creator. So if he's right at all, he's going to be out there, especially because he doesn't need to be a focal point of a defense at all, surrounded by KJ and DeShawn and guys of that like. A thing that leads me to being very encouraged from the tournament is that going into the offseason, you probably would have said Love and KJ were two of their best three players, if not their two best on pedigree alone. And they looked the part of a high major team without those two.
Right.
So you'd imagine that adding them can only improve it. So I think it's going to be a serious entity, which I was wavering more on that a couple weeks ago, but I think they got a real fighting chance to be a tournament team.
Yeah. I'm with you, and I think we can segue this into talking about Georgetown's offense, because I think that's where, I mean, KJ is going to be critical on both ends. He's going to play. He's going to be likely their best player. We thought that going in. I don't think anything we saw necessarily changed that. You can only be encouraged about adding KJ to this team, I think. Langston is a bigger question mark for me, if only because all of the things that you raised. But I think that the crucial point is that this team is good without Langston. and the things that he can add if he's able to shoot it at 38% like he has for his career and be a serviceable secondary creator, do those things offensively, that is a huge boost to an already solid team and really essential for the offense. Where are you on the offense based off of this tournament, understanding that there are questions that we just can't answer completely yet?
Well, at this tournament, I think the offense is a sell, unfortunately. They shot in the last 3 games against Canada and Brazil, they shot 37.9% from the field, which if compared against NCAA teams last year would have been dead last in the NCAAs. And they shot 28.5% from 3, which would have been about 361st out of 364. So
not last.
You can't, but my point is, it's not last, but you can't shoot like that and win games in college basketball. It makes it remarkable that they shot like that and played two quality opponents within 4-point games 3 days in a row. Now, it's unfair to critique this group because to some extent, because this isn't what the group's going to look like. Like you said, KJ and Langston are probably 2 of your best 3 offensive players that you're adding to it. In theory, you should shoot the ball better. Vince shouldn't be 41% from the field, and he should be 55 on dunks. Malik should shoot it better. Julius shot 43% from the field. That should be better. But this can't be a team that shoots it at St. John's rates last year of like a 44-30 and win. Because even though the defense is going to be great, I don't think they're going to create the offensive rebounds on these second chance looks. I don't know if they might create some of the turnovers that lead to runouts, but they're going to have to start generating easier baskets. Now, Cooley's pretty good at that.
Yeah.
He runs a lot of half court stuff that gets good baskets. And I don't think they ran a lot at this tournament. I think it was a lot of freestyling. So take all these numbers with a grain of salt, but they got to make shots, man. And we'll see.
I'm with you. It's a sell based off of the tournament. Looking ahead, I'm a firm hold. And I think that last point that you make is the critical one to me. I don't think that they ran a ton of their stuff, in part because they didn't have KJ or Langston out there, who presumably will be big parts of the offense that they try and run. But they just weren't running a lot of half court stuff. When they did, it looked pretty good. They got some good looks. So I think there's a reason for optimism, but based off, you said it, they can't, if the offense looks like it did, or not even looks like it did, if the offense just performs the way it did in this tournament, they're not going to be good. And I don't think that I don't think it will, but it's at least slightly concerning that that's on the table, maybe.
Yeah, it has to be better. Just your centers aren't going to shoot 40% from the field over a long sample size. But if I leave the offense with one positive, they very willingly shared the ball.
Yeah.
The ball didn't stick.
Really
and
good. Yeah.
A lot of the guards made the extra pass correctly throughout the tournament, whether that led to made shots or not. Can't really give bad grades to Jeremiah or DeShawn in that aspect. They really kept it moving on the perimeter, and hopefully that leads to easy baskets over the course of the season in the winter.
Yeah, I think they averaged either 19 or 20 assists per game, which is great. All right, lastly, before we just look at big picture, where are you on Georgetown's defense?
I mean, if as far as I can sell it, the offense, I'll buy the defense.
Yeah, give me all of that stock back on the defensive end, for sure.
Because, just what I just said, that you shot 38% from the field and 28% from 3 over a course of 3 games, and you could have won all 3.
Yep.
That's a statement as to how tough the defense was. I think they got a little lazy in the championship game, but they were on used legs and worn out tires. It's only going to get better when they add KJ to it, who's one of the better premier defenders in the country.
Yeah.
Love's a guy who's not great on that end, but he can survive on that end. He's 6'4", can move, when he's healthy, can move a little bit. They're not going to be small. Well, they're not going to be big 1 through 4, but they're physically up for the challenge. These guys can take bigger They can make things hard for bigger guys, make things hard for smaller guys. They're very switchable. And Vince is, he's not Sorber in terms of how well he's going to protect a rim with perfect instincts, but he does a lot of things athletically that can make up for the guys around him who don't need a lot of making up for in the first place. So I think they're in a really good position on that end, and Cooley can coach that end. They're only going to get better as they play together.
Yeah, I think you've got a shot at a top 20 defense, frankly, this year. I mean, they were, before Sorber went down, they were hovering around the 30, 40 range. I think they're going to be better. There's a lot to like defensively.
Yeah, it kind of all depends on how much Vince plays.
Right.
If Vince is a 20-minute-a-game guy, then I'd probably temper that a little bit. If he's a guy that really captures and grasps that job and can play 28 minutes without foul trouble, then they're going to be really good.
Yeah.
Sorber, it's so hard to compare anybody to Sorber because he was
Right.
such an anomaly defensively, how good their defense was with him out there. I mean, when he was out there, they were a top 5 to 10 defense in the country. What he did rim protecting, or at least how teams fared shooting at the rim, is just an anomaly that nobody's going to touch. But it's going to be good.
Yeah.
It's going to be really good.
You're right that Vince is not the rim protector instinctually or in practice, but from what we saw, I like his upside a little bit more than Sorber's on switching out on the perimeter. They're going to be a really solid defensive team. Let's close with kind of our last take here. And are you buying or selling Georgetown making the tournament this year based off of this tournament? And I will add to this, we heard from Coach Cooley. I think that's the realistic goal. That's a goal that he's setting. We'll ask that more explicitly, but I think that's the benchmark this year for sure. So are you buying or selling it?
Can I hold it?
You can hold it. Yeah.
I'll hold it. I'll give them like 35 to 40% chance of making it.
Yeah.
But I will caveat it, we're Georgetown basketball and nothing ever goes right. But let's run down a checklist of things going right. If Malik Mack is 14-5 on 38 to 40% from the field, which isn't even crazy to say. If KJ Lewis is 16-6, which again isn't crazy to say if you look at his per 40 averages extrapolated out towards 32, 33 minutes of gameplay on a team that's going to give him a little higher usage.
Yeah.
And if Vince is 10-7-2 and can stay on the floor for 25 minutes a game, if those 3 things happen, I think you're like an 8 seed. And it doesn't seem all that far-fetched for those things to happen. Hopefully they do. It's so comparable to Cooley teams from the past that made the tournament.
Yeah.
And I think even on paper might even be a little more talented than some of them. So I think it's got a shot.
Yeah.
But they have to beat up the Big East a little bit, like 13 wins in the Big East, because the Big East isn't going to be very good. And they got to win 3 out of the 5 high major games they get in non-con. Beat Clemson, win 1 in Orlando, maybe 2 in Orlando. But I want them to steal that Maryland game so bad. 4 games into the season, Maryland will have not played with each other at all. You just go to their place and punch them in the mouth.
I think I don't even know if this is a hot take, but if I have any take coming out of this, it is that DeShawn Harris-Smith is not letting Georgetown lose that game against Maryland.
Oh, he's going to be, I can't imagine how animated he is during that one. That will be fun.
I think I'm slightly ahead of you in terms of percentage that Georgetown makes the tournament. I think your analysis is spot on. I just think there's more paths to them making the tournament this year with this team than they've seen in the past. And I think you laid out one right there that is probably the most likely. But they are, as I said, the floor is higher, and that will lead them to having a real shot and potentially, being in that 8 seed conversation that you talk about. I think that's absolutely right. So I'm a small but optimistic buy on Georgetown making it.
Yeah, I think it's better than I would have hoped a week ago.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts, final takes from the Global Jam Canadian extravaganza before we get out of here?
I think that's all I got. I hope we never play Brazil ever again for as long as I live.
Seriously. They were that was, as Coach Cooley said, they celebrated like that was their Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, that wore me out. That was
brutal.
they made shots and played dirty, which, hey, gotta respect it.
Yeah. All right. Well, lot to like coming out of Canada. Georgetown is going to be off for a week or so, but we will be here bringing you more content and coverage. And Hoya Saxa.
As always.